So I went from doing $500 a week to, I said, let's 10x this. So I invested $5,000 one week and I said, now let's double it. And I did 10,000 the next week. And that was my first like big win where I generated 83,000 in cash and in profit in that 2-week period. And that was like the point where I said, all right, we're not looking back. And so in that next 6 months six months generated $1 million. And then I just kept going because it became easier. Like it's that multiplier effect. When you have the data and you keep doing the same thing over and over, now it's just about tweaking it. But that one tweak can make a 10x difference.
Hello and welcome to The Modern Consultant. I'm your host, Marc Aarons, and on today's episode, I have the pleasure of hosting Danielle Leslie. Danielle has been a dear friend for close to 10 years at this point, but she's best known as the founder of Culture Ad Labs and the creator of Course from Scratch, which to date has over 10,000 members. And because of this, Afrotech recognized her as a unicorn because she grew that company from 0 to 20 million in just 4 years. On top of that, she has been called the Millionaire Maker by Forbes because several women are generating millions from their courses as a result of taking Danielle's programs. She goes beyond just showing people how to launch an online course and how to infuse it with their culture ad, which is short for cultural advantage. In addition to this, she is also a partner in MemberUp. She's also the host of the Since 3000 podcast, as well as an investor in Yugo Labs and Ocho Wealth. In today's episode, we talk about it all. The journey going from 0 to 1 million, the journey going from 1 million to 10 to 20 million. We also talk about the quantum leaps in her mindset that she needed to take to be able to facilitate that kind of growth, and how she has even changed how she even looks at the role of CEO, no longer being a chief executive officer, but rather a chief visionary officer. There are so many lessons along the way. We also even get into health and how to perform at your best when you are running a company where tens of thousands of people are looking to you for guidance on how they can get to the next level of transformation in their business and their lives. I hope you enjoy this episode as much as we enjoyed recording it. And with that, I'll see you on the other side. Danielle, I just want to say welcome and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
I feel like this is a guilty pleasure because of how many times we've randomly met up, not even randomly, we just cross paths, from traffic and conversion to multiple birthday parties. And that's actually where I want to start. I want to go back in time because everyone at this point, if they've even glanced at your Instagram page, they're like, oh, Danielle, $20 million in course sales. And they're like, whoa, but I'm curious about Danielle before all of this happened. If we could go back in time to 2014, it's Oakland, and I think this is one of the first times we were actually meeting up, and we ended up at bunch of parties and hanging out and stuff. What was your mindset back then before Course from Scratch, before Forbes started calling you the Millionaire Maker?
Oh, yeah. So around that time, this hadn't even begun. So I was making that transition from working full time and building the confidence to know I am an expert, and not necessarily on tangible things, but also an expert on who I am and what I'm bringing in my story. So at that time, I think I had gotten let go from a job, and I knew I was looking for the next opportunity. And luckily I just did what I usually do, which is get on the phone with friends and give them unsolicited advice about whatever they surface. And they see value in that. And I ended up having people just ask me, can you consult for me? So I really started as a consultant. And had a friend of mine, she hired me to write an ebook for her. I had another friend consult her on her online course, which was in the travel hacking space. And another friend hired me to manage his small, medium business arm of business, and developing like a marketing plan for that and working with him to build out his new startup. So it was really like that of me leaning into the yes and the invitations instead of like, because I could have shrunk back and said, no, 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 it's okay. I'm just going to go get another full-time thing. But I really just took the yes and said, all right, I will build this as I go. And then of course, as you're building, you realize you already have everything you need.
You know, I remember back then, you even before you had like that full-time opportunity, before, you left that job, you had a vision for like building a startup, even before that. And
Yeah.
was that the inception of Culture Ad Labs, or would that name come later?
Yeah, I would say the name came later. Yeah, I mean, this was over a decade ago, had that dream of creating a startup. And at the time, I wanted to build it with the other two co-founders who were incredible. I joined the team with them and sell it for $2 million. That was my goal. Like $2 million was like, it might as well have been $1 billion back then. Like, it was like, oh my God, this is what we're gonna do. So I think through that process, when it was time to build this company and name it, I remember I was in Oakland at the time, and I went down to the business bureau or wherever you go to get your fictitious business name filed. And I remember walking there, and it's like, I went between two names. It was either Course Alchemy or Culture Ad Labs. And as with most decisions in my life, it was up until the last minute. And I was like, oh my God, I can't decide. Is it this or is it this or this? And I went with Culture Ad Labs. The labs piece was because I'm a tinkerer. My dad is a tinkerer. He's Jamaican background. Like, he's always building something. Yeah, let's go. You're my brethren. Like, we family. And it's like, when I just saw him a couple of weeks ago at brunch, and he's like, all right, Danny, this is what I'm working on. And we always just like nerd out on things he's tinkering with.
Awesome.
So I inherited that from him, and my mom is as well. So Sunday, she was on a webinar. I'm like, Mommy, what are you doing at Sunday night? She's like, I'm watching a webinar. I want to build an Airbnb business. All right. I'm like, cool. So growing up with parents who were always tinkering and had childlike curiosity always, I think had me think of, okay, labs. Well, the lab is where you do experiments and you tinker. You have a question and then you seek to answer the question. But really, the answering of the question is in the seeking. So labs to me was giving me the opportunity and the permission to continue to tinker. And the culture ad piece was really influenced by my time working in startups. And I went to this HR innovations panel, and it was a woman from Medium. And she said, when candidates come in, we don't ask, are they a culture fit? Because when you ask about people fitting in, you think about the origin of survival of the fittest. And what that means is that you're able to, if we're all, zebras with stripes, and you're born a zebra with polka dots, you're going to get shot first. Yeah. Like, it is actually a disadvantage to be different from the tribe, because it's harder to be protected, harder to blend in. And growing up, we are taught to blend in as to protect ourselves from the bullies, protect ourselves from being different. It's about being typical, not divergent. And so I think when I learned the shift from actually culture fit was great in the industrial age, when currency was following instructions because we were optimizing for efficiency. In these days, this age, having a difference of opinion, being a culture ad, and using your cultural advantage is actually, that's where the money is. Because if I can bring a different perspective, there is going to be way more demand, right? Less supply. I'm one of one. Way more demand for my perspective. So that means I have something to offer. So when I thought about the name, I'm like, Culture Ad Labs. This is going to be an environment where you as an individual can shine in all of your gifts. And that was really a message for myself as a reminder, but also for the community I was calling in, for the people I wanted to lead and help and contribute to. So that was like the origin of that name.
That is such a masterclass on positioning, and then also taking ownership of one's identity, not just in the marketplace, but also in life. I think it's fantastic. And there was also even like a hidden story in there as well about like your parents. It seems like it's really cool, because like I hear some of the traits like in my family tree as well, but like it seems like they have a bias towards not just action, but doing it with enthusiasm. And I've always seen enthusiasm as just this, to put it in context, Usain Bolt, he's about to
Mhm.
cross the finish line, right? He's smiling before he crosses the finish line. He's smiling as he's looking at the person next to him, and then he's smiling right after, like he crosses the finish
Wow.
line.
Yes,
And tying it back to cultural advantage, it's something that being Jamaican and growing up Jamaican has always stood out to me, because more than 50% of our GDP in Jamaica is coming from tourism. And a large part of tourism and hospitality is helping people to feel welcome. And part of that is rooted in that enthusiasm. Can you have fun while
Mhm.
also making progress towards whatever goal it is that you're working on? And it sounded like, just even with the story of your mom, like on the
Yes,
web, she's like, oh yeah, I'm going to do this. There's like this positive movement of energy, towards what it is that she wants in life. And I think that's incredible.
absolutely. Yeah.
Mm. So,
Yeah.
follow up question on that piece. Let's say we skip forward in time to, you have selected the name, for Culture Ad Labs. Had you already launched course from scratch at that time, or not yet?
Yes, I had. So by that time, I probably made about just a little over 100,000 from
Mhm.
my course. And so yeah, so I had already launched it. In that time, it was rocky road for sure, where it was a
Mhm.
lot of starting and stopping. And what really nudged me to launch it was a friend. And it was Morgan DeBon at Blavity. She was,
Ah, yeah.
yeah, and she was putting on a women's conference, and
Mhm.
the MC had dropped out at the last minute, and I was planning to go to the conference. And at this time, I barely could afford, the plane ticket and to go there. And so, she reached out, she said, would you be willing to step in as the MC? I had never MC'd before, but I was like, absolutely. She's like, all right, we have, like a $400 honorarium. I was like, bet, let's go. Let's
Nice.
do it. And I remember just scripting it. Beyonce had just dropped an album.
Mm,
I am scared was like the motto. So I incorporated her lyrics and everything. And it
nice.
was just such a moment of me being on stage in like a black leather jacket, crop leather jacket, and like a white tutu, and me just hair to the side with the earrings, just like
Mm,
giving my all. And just like providing a stage for these women to shine
mm.
and dropping what I knew along the way. And so after that conference is when she reached out and said, they want to hear more from you. Can you do like a webinar? And this was before webinars were in the common vernacular. So I'm like, yes. Okay. Again, leaning in, even though I was like, no, we do not want to do this, but we're going to do it. And that's the moment when I decided, okay, it's time to launch. If I do this webinar and I don't launch this thing, like I am going to be so upset with myself. So that's how I launched the course. I did the webinar, had tech difficulties. So webinar jam was a fail. I had to move everyone over to Zoom. I had the
Oh.
smallest Zoom account. So we had over 100 people trying to get in, but only 100 could come in. So I think I had a couple hundred, who weren't able to get in, but I'm like, all right, the show must go on. Let me
Mhm.
just do it. So even with all of that, I was still able to do, my $7,000 in sales.
Nice.
And then followed up, invested that. So I took that money as my investment to grow it. And I said, now let's spend the next 60 days actually growing this thing. And I didn't have an
Mm,
audience. So I was brand new online. So I said, let me do ads. How can I get to this goal? And I said ads. And so I used that seed money to hire someone to set up my ads account for me, put those initial ads up and to run it for me. And I invested like, $1,400 in the first ads and made like 4,000. And then I just took that and reinvested. So
nice.
after that first, kind of 60-day run, it was a $20,000 launch, which was like huge for me back then, knowing, all right, we just started kind of by accident, had no audience. And
Mhm.
that's how I got started. And that was my introduction to, all right, webinars can work. We can build an audience as we go. And by the way, we are building an audience around our offer instead of the other way around. We're not building an audience with like, I don't know who I am. I don't know what my story is. I don't know what I have to contribute. Instead, we started with the package. I am the asset. Here's the product. Here's the outcome. And now let's build the audience around that. So it was a very intentional audience building.
That is incredible. And I remember part of the story that comes after this, which is I think you'd spent like, you just, you'd done something that so many startups like try to get to the point of there's this book called Traction. There's two books, Traction. There's Gino Wickman, and then that's on the I think it's EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. But there's another one that talks about 19 different traction channels, and one of the things that they recommend in that book is you want to try a bunch of different tests and then find like the one marketing channel that works for you. And then it sounds like you found that channel. And then the next thing they recommend is, okay, double down on that. And I remember you doing exactly that, because I think you spent like 1 year doing a webinar every single week. Could you tell us that story?
Yeah, 2 years actually.
2 years. There you
On
go.
100 webinars.
Nice.
But yeah, so it's interesting, right? Because I am a tinkerer, and I love that you shared that philosophy of 19 different channels, testing them out and then honing in, doubling down on one. And I ended up doing the opposite. I am one who, and this just leads into my personality. I'm like, let's go all the way. So I really actually took a big bet on one channel, which was Instagram, and one selling medium, which was webinars. And I just took that all the way. And I actually didn't, test all the different ones, but that's because I know myself. And I know that that would have been paralyzing for me. I'm actually not prone to operations, systems, which you're really good at. You're like good at both. You're visionary and integrator. And I knew I didn't have that way of being and skill set yet. So I just went all in with that one. And yeah, and actually I did Landmark, and that was huge for me in learning the power of my word. So after leaving Landmark, I said, all right, what would happen if we kept our word to ourselves? If we said we are going to do one webinar for a year straight, we know when we do this, we're going to make $1 million. So I just had step one for me was the knowing. When I do this, this is going to happen. Because I had the knowing, there was no room to waver and try other things. Regardless of how it was going, this is what we're doing for a year. So yeah, I mean, in that year, it started out with the same model of I made some money, now I'm going to reinvest. So started with very small ad budgets. And because again, I go hard, I'm like, all right, well, we're seeing traction. So after 3 months of having data, so I had my spreadsheet, had my sales simulator, had everything logged. I knew my show up rate, my conversion rate, my pay in full rate, all of that. So I said, all right, I went from, doing $500 a week to, I said, let's 10X this. So I invested $5,000 one week, and I said, now let's double it. And I did 10,000 the next week. And that was my first big win, where I generated 83, it was over 100,000, but 83,000 in cash and in profit in that 2-week period. And that was kind of the point where I said, all right, we're not looking back. And so in that next 6 months 6 months generated $1 million. And then I just kept going, and I kept going because it became, it was easier. It's that multiplier effect. When you have the data and you keep doing the same thing over and over, now it's just about tweaking it, but that one tweak can make a 10X difference. So the one big tweak I made after I crossed that threshold of 100K a month, I said, okay, let's double the price point. So I went from $997 to $1997, and I just tested it for 30 days. But I added one thing in addition to doubling the price. I added a pay in full incentive. And I had one before, but it wasn't as strong as this one. And the pay in full incentive I added was a bonus session that you got with me. And it was a group session. On that session, I was going to walk you through one result, which was how I was able to make 25K per month on Instagram with organic. So not paid, but with organic. So on that session, it was really targeted. And it was okay, I'm going to show you the simple funnel I built. We're also going to write your first piece of tasty content together. And tasty just means when you create a piece of content that teaches them something, gives them action steps, solves an urgent pain point, transforms them from point A where they are to point B where they want to be. And it's in your voice, and it addresses their deeper why. So I, on that session live, gave them a template, and then they were able to write their rock bottom story for their first piece of tasty content. And then they got to share it live, and I would, give them real-time feedback. And it was great for me because I got to be a part of this community I was creating. I got to know every member's story and their rock bottom story, their most vulnerable story. And it opened them up to knowing how to look inside themselves for the stories that can connect with everyone. Anyone can teach, okay, these are the 3 steps to ABC, but no one can teach your hardest moment. And it's a universal truth that everyone can, even if they're not interested in your niche, everyone can relate to it, and they're going to tell a friend and tell a friend, and they're going to feel you. So that pay in full bonus meant I started to get 80% of the people to pay in full, which was the highest I'd ever had. That same philosophy of really mastering the pay in full bonus has had us, even with our evergreen, our automated funnel, still getting 70% of people to pay in full. So that was a big thing that I discovered like in that time when I was doing the weekly webinar. Again, like just paying attention, what's a tweak I can make? But yeah, I did that for 2 years straight. So 100 times in a row. I probably took like 5 weeks off and all that time. So I remember I was at my dad's house in Santa Clarita, and I'm like, Dad, I got a webinar to do. He's like, and it was the day before Thanksgiving. And I'm like, but Dad, like I do Big Money Wednesdays. It's every Wednesday. It doesn't matter. So I just popped up my laptop in his living room, and he's like, all right, Dan, you need anything? He's like, all right. And afterwards he's like, Dan, that was amazing. And I was like, I just made $40,000. Wow. But it's like even the day before Thanksgiving, I was just committed to it. I'm like, what would happen if I kept my word to myself?
That is excellent. The room that is listening to this is now split in 3 parts, I would say. There are the people who are wondering about the inner game story of what you just shared, and there are folks who are intrigued by the outer game. All of the strategy, the tactics, the metrics, and everything that you shared. You dropped a lot of gold in there. And then you have this even smaller segment, I think, who are interested in both. To help the inner game folks who might be listening in, there's one word you dropped in there where they're like, light bulb, landmark. What is that?
Oh, yeah. Landmark is an institute where they do training programs that really help you get out of your own way. So it starts with a weekend experience. So it's in person, which I loved. And it was like a Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And it's all day. It's from like 9 a.m. to 9, maybe 10 p.m. And you have a facilitator in the front. And we essentially go through exercises that help us identify stories like 3 times in our childhood that led to our core identity. What was that core identity we formed? So one for me was that I don't belong. I have no friends. Like I don't belong. I have no friends. So digging into what was the origin of that and how is that getting in your way today? So what I uncovered in that is I have this, I'm alone on an island. I don't fit in. And it's interesting because there's a double-sided coin with our identities, right? So that serves me because it means I really lean into originality. So whenever there's an opportunity to do something, I'm going to do it a new way. I'm about to relaunch my personal website. And when thinking about that, I said, here's the story for the website. I am going to another planet that has not been explored yet. And that inspired one of the outfits I wore, obviously, in the photo shoot. And I'm like, this is my outfit for going to this new planet. No one's been here. My job is to learn the land, learn the terrain, and create a blueprint so others can come here and thrive. I go and I do that. Then I travel back to Brooklyn because I was based in Brooklyn formerly. I travel back to Brooklyn and I have then my like gala outfit on that's like next, from another planet. And I'm getting off the spaceship and I'm inviting you to come with me. Those who are ready, those who can see the opportunity, let's go together. And then we travel back, to this new planet together and we like get to know this new environment as a new community. So that serves me, that identity if I don't belong serves me, and that I don't mind being the first one. I don't mind going out there and creating a new way. I love being original. I love being a culture ad, right? I'm not afraid to get shot first because I know I'm not going to because I'm too dope for that. Like they're going to be like, wait, I want to be your friend actually. So like that has served me in that way. The other side of that identity of I don't belong was when I built alone for way too long. I would wait until it was already built to invite people in instead of showing them in real time, here's what I'm doing, here's where I'm struggling, here's why I would love your help, here's why I want to lean into you and lean on you. So I think now, I've learned, all right, the other side of that is I actually do belong. I actually do love community and I'm a part of an amazing community. I'm going to, continue creating it. So yeah, so Landmark was great for uncovering that for me and how that's getting in the way of what I'm doing in my relationships. Not being able to build intimacy with friends, closeness. and let them in. It was just 2 years ago when I cried with a friend for the first time ever. Before that, no friends had seen me cry, probably just my mom. And even with her, I would like hold back and try to like be strong and all of that. So it really opened up the world of what happens when you let others in and let them into your process so they can help you and support you. So yeah, so Landmark, that's the intro program. And then after that, there's an advanced program that you can do that's also in person. Then there's a SELP. It's like I forget what it stands for, but it's a project that you build. And here's what was interesting. When I got to that project, that's when I quit. So that project, the whole premise is that you were going to create something and then give it away. I was like, wait, where we do that at? Like, I come from like, I have 100% ownership in this thing. I'm building it. It's mine. Like, I'm going to be a part of this forever. Maybe you could be a part of it. And so it really challenged me. And because I was still locked into that identity of, I've got to do it myself. I can't let anyone in. I can't trust anyone. I can't hire anyone to help me. I can't bring them in. I ran up and brushed up against that. I wasn't ready. And so I quit that program. But yeah, incredible program that's life-changing.
That is, I hadn't heard you share the Landmark story with that level of depth before. Like that, I learned some new things there. Thank you. Yeah. I mean, thank you for sharing. That was incredible, because one of the stories that my mind is making sense of in there is how it created this environment to be able to really just unlock what some people describe as like the shadow self, and then to integrate that with like the conscious self, to be able to then use all of the gifts that you have inside of you. Like it's something that copywriters will sometimes do, where it's like, how do you take the thing that you think is a disadvantage and turn it into an advantage? And it's exactly what you did, but then like you applied it to life and the business and everything. I think that's fantastic. And that's such a principle that could be applied to anyone's life at any point, for anyone that's listening into this, wherever they are on the consulting journey, whether they're just starting out, whether or not, they're $1 million consultant, or whoever the case may be. And if they're trying to like evolve their business model, which we'll definitely get into in a little bit, because you've done so much to evolve not just yourself, but your business model over time. And so like, that's just a few things that stood out to me with the personal growth journey through Landmark. The other piece is just how crisp and clear your memory of all of your transformative experiences are. And I'm going to come back for those of you who are listening in and you're like, wait, what about the outer game metrics and stuff? We're going to get there, but we just got to go a little bit more on this. With your personal growth journey and trajectory, I'm curious, do you have any kind of reflective practice like journaling or meditation or anything like that you do to gain insights?
Yeah, so it's been an on and off. So I had a time, and it was shortly after Landmark, actually, when I was really committed to journaling, and I added another element to it, I think, that really helped accelerate my time, which was I would every morning, I had my top 3 things I was doing that day. And then what I would journal about was future casting. So I would identify one moment in my day when I looked at the calendar and I was like, ooh, that feeling you get, and you're just like, oh. And it's like a feeling of like stress or anxiety or worry for whatever reason. It might be a certain meeting with maybe a team member who maybe you're self-conscious around, or maybe there's tension. That day I had an interview I remember one day in particular, I had an interview with the Facebook ads person, and I was intimidated by this guy. I was like, he is a stats math major. He's going to do circles around me. Like, I don't even know what questions to ask him to vet him properly and all of this. And which says a lot, right? Because I had run my own Facebook ads up until 30,000 per month in spend, making 130K per month. So I knew my stuff. Like, I'm like, I could run them, but I was still intimidated. So for instance, on a morning like that, I actually journaled and I said, these are the 3 words I'm going to embody in my conversation with him. I am humor. I am powerful. I am curious. Nice. And then I wrote out how the session was going to go with him. I'm going to ask him about this. I'm going to ask him about family. I'm going to ask him about that. So whatever that I could do to make myself feel comfortable and feel safe to self-express and be humorous, powerful, and curious. And it went that way. And it was beautiful. And we connected on a personal level. So that was my form of journaling then. When I saw a lot of progress, it was that micro focus on, okay, what's coming up today? So it was more kind of future journaling, future casting, and embodying my future self now. So that was a great practice. And then another self-reflective practice was TM, Transcendental Meditation. So I picked that up a couple of years ago. And it was that practice of every morning for 20 minutes, just, sitting in silence, repeating my mantra in my head. And then in the afternoons at around 3 p.m., doing that again. And what I coupled with that was studying Dr. Joe's book, Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself. So
I don't think I know that one.
Oh, Dr. Joe, get into it. He is the man. So that was his very first book. I think his most known book is Becoming Supernatural. I started reading that. Oh, okay. Yeah. I started listening to that and I was like, okay, this is a little too advanced for me right now. Like for some reason it's not landing. So I went back to Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself because I realized that, all right, I can do the reflecting. I can do the journaling. And I realized that is thinking. That is me being in my head. That is cerebral. And I'm so good at being in my head. I was raised, I think, Western, we really prioritize the mind and we think the mind is the superpower. And in other cultures, it's the body. The body is the all-knowing being. The fact that we have more nerve endings than the galaxy has. The fact that, so many in our gut, right? Like actually the body is where the answers are, but we think the brain is where the answers are. But really the brain is making up whatever it can to fathom the unfathomable nature of what's happening in our bodies. So reading Breaking the Habit of Being Yourself taught me I have these ways of being, which back then was anxiety and stress. Those were my most common places I would go to. When things were going really well, I'd be like, I would like nap and I would just start stressing about anything. I would make up something. So I wanted to get to the bottom of that. Like, what is that? So in reading that book, I learned, all right, my cells have been trained to behave in a certain way. And my body will have sensations. And my brain has gotten into a pattern of identifying those sensations with a story and putting meaning on it, saying, oh, you must be stressed. Oh, you must be tired. Oh, you must be this. When in reality, maybe I had, dairy for lunch and I'm just a little bloated. Like, you feel me? Like maybe we're just tired. Maybe we only got 5 hours of sleep from a great night of partying. And the dopamine was so high last night that of course we're going to feel lower naturally because we were all at the all-time high. Maybe it's just that, right? So that really helped me think about, okay, how can I retrain my body on a cellular level? So coupling that with the meditation was really, really helpful. So those were a couple practices that helped me a ton, in addition to therapy, right? So having someone I can speak to, I can reflect, things with, and and just dive deeper on things on.
Oh, man. So, all right. Vulnerable moment. I was on a call. Today's Wednesday. Yeah, I was on a call yesterday with a therapist turned performance psychology coach for like 7 and like 8-figure like sales copywriters and like other like successful people and stuff. And a lot of the stuff that he teaches, it sounds like you just figured it out by yourself. And so that's what I'm piecing together, because particularly around embodiment is what I'm hearing one of the themes when you call out like the 3 things that you chose to be prior to going into that meeting with a Facebook ads expert. That's that. So many of us don't do that. I mean, and by so many, I mean me. That's something that I'm currently working on, where it's like, oh, what is the intention that I want to bring into this space, this physical space, this virtual space, so on and so forth. And so I love that because it's such an incredible and powerful place to create and share from. And all of the intellectual stuff and everything usually just seems to flow easily once we're actually in this place of embodiment, as opposed to trying to like intellectualize emotions and everything like that. Which brings me up to another piece, which is your it really does seem like one of your superpowers is just, like you said, pioneer. Did you ever take the strengths finders? Like,
Yes.
do you remember
Oh my God, I
your?
loved it. Yes. My top three, number one was futurist.
Mhm.
And so again, double side of every coin. So futurist, I'm motivated by the future, what could be. The other side of that means I get disinterested in the day to day. If there's a problem or an issue, I don't want to problem solve. I don't want to troubleshoot. I'm over it.
Oh.
But I'm a futurist, which is why, and I'm going to share these three things. And these are three things. This is a great hiring hack, which helped me so much in attracting my chief of staff. So she's my right-hand person. It's the evolution of, an EA, executive assistant, virtual assistant. Next step is chief of staff, just because we have multiple ventures. So in my job description, I said, this is my strengths finder. I said, I'm a futurist, which means this, which means I need you to be this. My second one is I'm an activator. So I'm really good at, if there's an idea, I love creating a roadmap. How do we get from where we are to point B? So really good at that. Now, the other side of being an activator is that does not come with integration. So I could come up with the plan, but when it comes to the discipline to integrate it and be, again, in the day-to-day, that's what I need your help with. And then the third one that I am is, futurist, activator, and I don't remember the third one. Yeah, I don't remember the third one, but yeah, it was so helpful when I did that. Yeah. What about you? What's yours?
So I remember I know that like these two are in the top five for sure. Well, number one is achiever, and I don't know, Jamaican. There's one bullet in the gun, and then I have one of those doctor fathers, like MD PhD types.
Oh wow, yes.
And when I was like 8 years old, he's like, every generation must be better than the one that came before,
Oh, no pressure.
No pressure at all. And I was just like, yeah, I mean, you kind of set the bar really high. I guess we're gonna have to figure that out. But it's actually really good as well. But achiever is one of the top five. Another one is learner. Like I like books, and I kind of like. It is 1000% a thing for me. I am a learner for life, and strategic. Is also one of like the top five. I'm forgetting what the exact order, but I know for sure like those three are in there. I don't know why. I just really love strategy. It's like my brain translates everything into, I would say, like GPS, like Google Maps. It's like, all right, we need a destination. Great. Okay, point A, where are we right now? All right, great. What are the routes for being able to get there? Okay, let's go. And just. Yeah. And anytime I get lost is actually, it's interesting because I was sharing this with one of my team members today, where it's like we were actually going through like personality profiles, and it's like, you might see some negative stuff in here, but you've got to consider like the flip side of it. And for me, it's like, if I don't feel like achieving, it becomes a yellow or red flag for something else that might be going on. If I don't feel like learning, and that's my base. If I don't feel strategic, it's like, oh, that's the signal that something might be like really off, and I need to go and check into that. Yeah.
That's so good. You reminded me. So I have two threads. One is, my third one is optimizer. So which I translated as, doing the most with the least. How do we take something and really, which explains my whole approach, right? It's like one course, one funnel, one webinar, doing the most with the least. That really feeds into it. And I think when you shared, I love how you shared that, that something's off when you are not feeling like the learning and you're not feeling like the strategy. And I realized in that time when I was studying Dr. Joe and I was meditating, what I came back to was, all right, I want to be self-expressed. Like my new measurement, my former measurement was the health of the business. The health of the business meant the health of me, which at a certain point worked and then stopped working. And it became very counterproductive. So then I searched for a new measuring stick, which was more internal, which was, do I feel self-expressed? Am I feeling self-expressed from moment to moment? And so it sounds like for you, when you're self-expressed, you're in a mode of learning, you're in a mode of strategy. And So I think a good question for us to ask ourselves is, okay, when we reach that moment of not feeling self-expressed, what do we do? And one of the things I did was to start actually creating deeper bonds with friends. And
Oh.
it's one friend group in particular who I think translated into family, meaning, again, we could cry together, do things together. But one thing we would do is have parties. So my best friend, Sean, I actually was just on the phone with him, Sean Derrick, he is amazing.
Ah, yeah.
He would throw these incredible gatherings. And one of the gatherings, it was called The Party That Never Happened. And it was, the premise was, there's one night where all of you're going to choose one historical figure. So choose a figure in history that represents your identity. Who is the future you? Who do you want to be? Who has your values, right? Choose one figure. You are going to come to the party as that figure. You are going to enter this portal, and you will be with historical figures from any time. And we're all brought here with the mission. We don't know what the reason is, but we're going to figure it out when we get there. And so I chose Josephine Baker. And I remember I watched, a couple documentaries on her, and I'm like, oh, she is dope. She was a singer. She got trained in opera, a performer. She lived an unconventional romantic life. She moved from the States to Paris, but at the same time, she was an advocate and an activist for Black people, and would be in rooms that other Black people couldn't get into because she could pass, and she was allowed to be in those rooms. And when she was in there, she used her voice to uplift us. And so she was the figure I chose. And that night we were invited to really speaking of embodiment, embody that character. So for me, it was, I actually sang and I encouraged everyone to dance, and I was just fully self-expressed. So coming from that party, I remember I saw a surge in me wanting to be productive, me wanting to create, a surge in my business. And it was because I took those moments to tap into, okay, where can I be my fully self-expressed self? Even if it's outside of my day-to-day regular, oh no, but I got to be in the meeting. I got to do that. Sometimes we need to shake it out and we need to ask, okay, where can I go to be who is going to bring that out of me? Who's going to inspire me as my self-expressed self? And that just feeds everything.
Oh, that's incredible. It reminds me of a call that I had maybe just 2 hours before this one with a friend of mine who, brilliant copywriter. He was responsible. The Motley Fool?
Oh, yes.
Yeah. So back when he was still living here in DC, he used to drive 60% of front end acquisition for the Motley Fool. He's good. And
wow.
Yeah, he's such a solid guy. And actually he's going to be on the podcast. It's going to be a fun episode. I might have to connect you guys. But he was saying how we often play these finite games, in these areas of life that we're trying to progress in, and we're usually needing to play an infinite game, just keep the game going, keep progressing. And if we think about it that way, then we tend to improve. But there is a false dichotomy of, thinking about, oh, well, we have to, if for me to progress in health, I need to then, let go of some of the wealth, or for me to progress in love, I have to then let go of, my aspirations for wealth or generational wealth. And the point that he was making, which ties back into what you just shared, which is, allowing one area of life to fuel the others. You came from that party, and then it's energy, from self-expression to then express more in business. I think that's fantastic. I've experienced the same. It's why I go to the gym. People think I'm crazy, but I will often go to the gym at 5 a.m. in the morning.
Wow. That means waking up at 4? Oh my gosh, Mark.
It's 4:30. DC is very small, thankfully. It's just down the street. Sometimes I get there late, but late for me is 6 o'clock, or even 7. But the energy that I feel at the end of it, today was one of those days where I was just ooh, okay, it might be a longer day, but ooh, I want to set the tone, and then I just carry it through for the rest of the day. And I'm trying to experiment and do more of that as well. I want to flip back, because I made a promise to people listening in.
Yes.
Go back to the numbers, the outer game, and everything. And so if we go a little bit back in time, it's 2017, We're at dinner in New York. Louisa Chow is there, Michael Roderick is there, Gamal is there, and of course from scratch it's like taking off. And I remember you sharing when we'd asked at the table, like, what are you needing support with? Or you shared this, I never forgot it. And you were looking for new experiences at the time. And the reason you shared was because you had been so focused on like doing the webinars and growing it and everything like that. And it's like, all right, great. You have this upward trajectory and you wanting to bring more newness into your life. I want to know if that desire then connects to the point where you're closer to now with the launch of the Since 3000 podcast and the fuller expression of Danielle Leslie.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. First of all, you have a great memory because I would never have recollected what I said. Oh my gosh, that's so cool. Absolutely. And I think it's so interesting because soon after that dinner, I think was when I had my first LSD experience. So I definitely called in to experience it and it was like, here you go. Nice. And that was a huge experience for me because it actually was the beginning of my spiritual journey. Before that, I had been locked into the lone leader identity. And after that experience, I would walk down the street and see a stranger and really be like, I love you. It was my first time really feeling like connected to everyone, to God, to universe, like everything. So that definitely started my journey. And so, yeah, since 3000, I mean, geez, I launched that podcast because I was in a era of questioning. I think, you know, they say there are years that ask the questions and years that answer them. And I think I had been in answering mode for so many years before that. And okay, webinars, the answer, revenue, keep going, keep going, keep going. And so finally, it was like taking a breath. And I got into this inquiry of who am I? Who am I? And I had, you know, gone through a breakup. So it's like, who am I without this relationship? And then it was, and also, who am I without this business? Because this business is the other relationship I've been in. My business is now officially the longest relationship I have been in for my entire life, you know, going on 8 years. So I realized that's actually a relationship. And so the question was, who am I? And so the podcast was my ability to share more, because when you're doing a webinar and you have ads running, it's great. And then you reach a point where my throat, who have I seen? Probably like someone did my human design. And they said, your throat chakra it's stifled. Like this is flowing, it's flowing up here. Right here is where it gets stuck. Like you are thinking things, you are feeling things, and you're not saying them. So the podcast was my outlet to finally share in real time without thinking like, oh wait, it's got to be for the business. It's got to be for this. And so Since 3000 was a beautiful brand that was built around, and it's called Since 3000 because it's like, you know, established in 1984, right? You see that. And it's always a past date of when something was started. What I wanted to bring together was this awareness of the eternal present. And knowing that there are different timelines happening at the same time, knowing that you can time travel by embodying your future self now. So Since 3000 means, you know, the future you is happening at the same time as the past you is happening as the current you. The more awareness we can have of the lessons of the past, the awareness of the future, and the awareness of the present and the certainty of the future, the more we can embody all of those at once, really means we can think, do, feel, achieve anything. So Since 3000 was a tribute to that. And it was my time to just show up differently than I ever had before, you know, on my couch in my living room, bring in some of my favorite people. And on the podcast, we talk about everything from business. So yeah, Gamal is on there talking about exit blueprint and how he exited his business, how he's now helping other people sell their businesses, to Paige, who knows about human design and tapping into how you can use your chakras and how you're actually built in favor of who you are instead of fighting against who you are because everyone else is doing it that way. So I should too. No. What works with your design? to Tara Reid, you know, who's built Apps Without Code and is now building a brand new tech platform. All those people, it was my time to talk to them about the business stuff, but also who were you as a kid and how was that influence what's happening? What's been getting in the way? So yeah, so definitely, I mean, it's a great show to listen to and check out. The team, the video looks amazing. And it was my way to also self-express through fashion and just have a good time. Yeah.
I have seen you have been crushing the fashion game. it's I was just like, I think our Jamaican side is showing. Yeah. It's like, pow.
Yes.
It's beautiful to see. Representation absolutely matters. You know, one of my mentors and friends, Ramit, you know, when he had made a public statement during Black Lives Matter, you know, and he's had a long-standing policy of like not commenting on politics, but then like he revised that like just in light of everything that was happening, and you know, it was very heartening, you know, to just hear, you know, and it in that moment, hearing someone that I hadn't needed or known that I wanted to like speak for me or on my behalf or anything, but then I felt this release that I didn't know I needed. Like, oh, people do care. The representation, like it was like the embodiment of the representation matters, you know. And I know that there are those who see your podcast and will have that experience because you are centering people who have not traditionally been centered, who are doing phenomenal things in the world. And sometimes we just need to see that something is an option for us to like, because not everyone has your gift of being that pioneer. And sometimes we need others to be able to just lead and be like, hey, spark this idea of what's possible for us to then start running after it. So thank you for doing that in such an intentional way. Because I also picked up on what you were putting down with the whole, you know, since 3000, you know, podcast name and intention, because that's just like, she layered in quantum physics into, I was like, superposition, time travel. Oh, cool. Oh, wow. Yeah, there's gonna be some very nerdy people who are listening to this who are gonna dig that, and the way that you like wove that in. That was really fun.
Oh, thank you for getting it.
Yeah, of course. I always love some intentionality, and you do not have any shortage of that whatsoever. And to fulfill on the promise of the outer game to the people who are just like, yeah, you guys went down this other path of like in a journey.
What happened to the data? How did we get there again?
So I'll bring it back. I got them. I got you. So, all right. So we've crossed the 1 million mark with like Course from Scratch, you know, and then you decide that you're going to do one of the things that people who know you well know that you're really good at, which is quantum leaping. And you're like, all right, I'm going to go from 1 mil to 10 mil. Tell us that story.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I mean, it's wild because I didn't set out. Actually, I'm lying. I probably did. I was like, I didn't set out to do it, but I think it's one of those things where like, I will set the goal. So we crossed 1 million. And at that time, it was just me in the business full time. I had a couple freelancers here and there along the way, but it was me. I had no team. And then after I crossed the 1 million mark, what helped a lot is I did set a goal, but I think it was like, oh, let's just double it. But the rate in which we started growing meant that, yeah, we were able to generate 10 million in the next 2 years. And the things that worked were, one, doubling down on what was working. So I continued like with the ads and the webinar. And then I added team members because I really believe 1 + 1 = 11. When you have someone who is holding your own, the growth is going to be exponential. So adding a customer support person, I essentially just looked at like, what is draining my energy so that I can be freed up to do more innovative thinking. So bringing on a customer support person, at the time the tickets were taking my energy. When you see a refund request, or you see, someone saying, I didn't like this, or I didn't like that, that you absorb that as the creator, and that impacts how you move forward. So the first thing I was able to delegate was that. The big jump was, man, it's so wild because we just kept doing the same thing, because we actually didn't introduce our second product until after we crossed 10 million. So when I think about going from 1 to 10, it was doing the same thing. One change I did make is automating our webinar. So we did automate it. So I just tapered out. So I just started with the ad spend, 20% to the automated, 80% still going live. And then over the weeks, as the automated webinar was hitting our benchmarks, I just tapered the live webinar spend down. And then eventually we had 100% of the ad spend going to the automated webinar. So that was effective. And one thing that was helpful during that time was we did a giveaway to collect testimonials. So we have over 300 videos that we collected during that time of students sending in video saying how their lives were impacted. And it was really helpful because I hadn't built that into the product, right? Like if I could go back, like smart thing to do is build it in as a module, right? As middle module and final module, give them the opportunity to share their experience, and you can, collect those testimonials and reviews as you go along. We do have an NPS. So we do ask them, would you recommend this to a friend throughout the course? But we didn't do videos. So we did this great campaign, and that gave us a lot more social proof than we had before. So we now have a page, coursefromscratch.com/reviews, and it's like 300 videos. And then we had 1,000 people write in. So that's one big initiative that we did that was different over that time. Everything else was doing our thing. One thing that helped is that was during the time when, during the pandemic, where people were looking for online learning opportunities. So I used that time to go live, whereas before I never really went live. I didn't do any Facebook lives, Instagram lives, anything like that. So I did one live, and then did the webinar and did a quiz. I had never done a quiz before. So we created the culture ad quiz, and that helps you identify what type of course you can create by what your culture ad type is. So from all of the students who submitted their data on their course topic, how much money they made from it, how long it took them to launch, we just crunched that, put it into 6 different culture ad types. And so now you can take that quiz, and it's at, I think, culturead.com, or myculturead.com. And you can take that quiz, and then it spits out, here's your type. And also here's 3 people who have launched courses in your niche as well.
Nice.
So that was really helpful. So I think those were the main things we did differently in that time, to grow.
That is excellent. I remember when you had put out that call for everyone to send in videos, and then I remember seeing all the videos flood in. And I remember when you put up that page, and it was like, that's a lot of videos. That's awesome. I love it because I have a module in my stuff where it talks about like building a case study library and everything, and it's so cool. Like HubSpot does this really well as well, where you can like filter by the different industry, but for anyone that's using HubSpot for whatever the case may be, and for anyone that's listening in, HubSpot is now all-in-one. Used to be a marketing platform, now it's an all-in-one platform for all the digital things. But what's cool about what you did that they haven't done is the showing you 3 people, that are like you, because again, sometimes we need to see people who we can resonate with for us to be able to take that first step of the journey. There's also something else about what you shared that I love the simplicity of, which is we just kept doing what we were doing. It reminds me of Ready, Fire, Aim by Michael Masterson. Brilliant copywriter turned business strategist. But in the subtitle of that book, I believe, is 0 to 100 million in like no time flat. And I think he had took Agora Inc. to that number. I think it was like over the span of like 9 years or something like that. It's really amazing. But what's cool about that book is he breaks down the growth stages of businesses. And in the $1 million to $10 million range, he actually talks about what you just did, which is keep doing what you're doing. Like,
Oh, wow.
because it's so easy. Gamal talks about this too, where it's like, it's so easy to, just want to do the new thing, but the fact that you were able to just hey, let's keep doing the thing. Because then it becomes more about, okay, well, you've got to make sure that you have a team in place to be able to make sure that trains are running on time and that you're protecting your time and everything as well. And then there's a whole nother evolution that, happens from like the 10 to $100 million range. But yeah, those are the two stories that like popped up in my head in response to that. Now, that also brings us up to, the other part about the story that I really enjoyed is I remember when we ran into each other at Traffic and Conversion. It was 2017. I hadn't done the dinner yet, like later that year. And I remember I think you were coming up on the $1 million mark, or you just crossed it. And I remember you telling me like, oh, wow, yeah, you have like one team member. And I was like, what the hell? Like, that's insane. Like, she sounds like a Jamaican. She has 3 jobs. Like,
I was doing all the jobs, Mark. Okay. Running the ads, writing the emails, sending the emails, doing the copy on the landing page, doing the text, everything.
But so much respect, and I again, I'm so also thankful that you then protected your time by getting support as well. Moving forward,
I'll highlight one thing, Mark. Yeah, it's wild because those were actually, I had so much time freedom during that time. So I spent, the first kind of those 6 months like doing the live webinar, but it's like once I got going, the reason I was able to be a one-person show was because we forget, like, these are tech-enabled businesses, and we can get caught up in, oh, you need a big team, or you've got to do this partnership, this speaking engagement, be a part of this, be a part of that. I think that's where our attention gets divided, and then our product and our process falls apart. But because I was like, I'm going to do this webinar, I'm gonna just keep doing it, and maybe some other people think it's boring and it's weird, but I'm going to do it. Back then, I remember I would work about 2 hours a week, and those were the 2 hours on the webinar, and then 1 hour looking at my Facebook ads data, making any changes. And that was it, and just hitting send on the emails. So I had so much time freedom. Profit was amazing. So, I mean, people like listening to this, like, I did it because it's possible at that stage, like, and you can stay there forever and live amazing, yeah.
That explains a lot, because I remember you were like in a different country or city like every I was like, oh, she's on the beach. Oh, she's doing a webinar from another country now. Like,
yes.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Skipping forward in time to podcast, since 3000, it seems like you've now entered this different stage of growth. And I believe you'd referred to it as, moving away from like lone wolf leadership and more to thinking and being driven by community. Could you tell us more about that, and maybe even, other irons that you have? Like, I even like if someone watches the podcast, like they'll hear you talking about MemberUp, could you tell us more about that?
Absolutely. So I think like the beautiful thing about building a course business is when you don't see it as the destination, but you see it as a vehicle to then create a lane for you to do whatever you want afterwards, it becomes so magical. I think for the longest time, I was locked into, this is the one thing I'm doing for the rest of my life, and I've got to build this course business to X, that I had blinders on. When I shifted to, oh, wait a minute, because I have now reached certain levels with this course business, I have opportunities coming my way. We have, oh my gosh, we have over 10,000 people who have created their own courses. And guess what they're using? They're using course hosting platforms. So I started to ask myself, okay, what I did is we look at your spreadsheet, and I'm like, what are my top expenses as a business owner? And what are the things I use most? And one of them is a course hosting and community platform.
Yep.
I'm like, I now have tens of thousands of people and hundreds of thousands on my email list who probably could benefit from a course hosting and community platform. I have insights in how we can make that really beautiful. And so a couple of years ago, I said, okay, I want to either acquire or build a course hosting platform. And, for us, like for the community I've created, for what I want. And I, around that time, worked with Amy Sangster, who was working with Boss Babe on their masterclasses for their community. And so they asked me to do a masterclass, and Amy and her partner, Hunter, produced the class. It was, oh my God, it's so good. It's such a good class. And that was my opportunity to work with them. And I said, and as I was working with them, I'm asking more questions, and I'm discovering all these additional superpowers. It's like Amy had built, has like millions of views on YouTube organically, had made 7 figures from her online course from YouTube organically, and now does video production, and then built Boss Babe's membership platform. And so I'm like, wait, hold on. I'm like, we need to talk, because I've been calling you in. So let's have a conversation. And so what that evolved into was us becoming partners in this platform. And so MemberUp is a new course hosting community and membership platform. It's incredible. It's community first. So first of all, it's beautiful. It's one of my gripes with other platforms was like, I'm in me mode. Like I'm like in self-expression mode. I'm like, we are whole beings. Like I don't want it to look like everyone else's. And I want my members, when they come in, they're paying a couple $1,000, or if they buy Course Alchemy, our advanced program, or do our mastermind, it's, tens of thousands, right? I want them to come in and feel elevated. Like this is a premium experience. Like, wow, right? Not like I just pay all this money. You're like, wait, this is it. Well, this is it. What? And so I felt like the other platforms, it took way more work to get them to that point, or it just wasn't ever going to get there. So it's beautiful. It feels elevated. One of the things that we've done that, again, is going back to that identity of I don't belong, I have no friends. I think as the leaders, we can sometimes, going into our courses and our communities, forget that we are creating a community and we're part of it. And so what will happen is we'll put this pressure on ourselves. We need to be the source of all the information. We need to have all the answers on these Q&A calls. And when we have this community, we're the only one who can answer the questions. And we forget that we can cultivate a space where our community members rely on each other, where they form JV partnerships with each other, where they become accountability partners, where they ask themselves for opportunities. And the other platforms weren't nudging me to do that. So inside MemberUp, we have this feature called Spark, and it's all about sparking conversation from your members. So every day when you log in, there's a Spark card, and it'll be a question. Those conversation starter cards? So I love those, because growing up, I had a complex of being boring. Like I thought my biggest fear was being boring. I was like, I want to be a good conversationalist. So even when I had my little boyfriend in 4th grade, I would make a list of 20 questions that I was going to ask Brian Young, shout out to him. I was going to ask Brian 20 questions because I didn't want to be boring. So as an adult, still, I love conversation starter cards. So we built that into the platform where your members log in, there's a question every day, and it can be business related. Like, what's your number 1 business goal this week? Or it can be personal. What's one childhood memory that made you cry recently? And in order to see the answers, you can see 20 other members have answered the question, but in order to see it, you need to answer it yourself. So that really inspires them to get active.
That's
nice. You answer it yourself. And once you answer it, then it reveals the answers of all your other members. And then you can private message them. So if you see someone who had an answer that's vibing with you, it's giving dating app vibes. I love it. Or just business bestie vibes, but you can reach out to that person, right? And then you have the opportunity to share your response on social media. So if it's your community, this is now organic marketing built in. Your members are sharing the cards, and it'll take them back to your landing page where they can sign up for your community. So in creating this platform, it's like really thinking again about, okay, what's our identity that we formed as kids that's getting in the way now? And how can we empower ourselves to remind ourselves we are a part of a community, and let's empower them to support each other. And let's have it like feel really good. Like it vibrationally feels good, because the founding team is also very spiritual and tapped into body and feeling and frequencies. The frequency of this platform is high. I've never experienced anything like it. easy to use. And we have education you get in there. So MemberUp University that actually shows you how Amy launched her membership site, made 100,000 in a quarter, and pre-sold it. So before creating any content for it. So we give the members that education when you join, so that you're not left like, how do I build a membership, and then how do I like launch my course in here? So yeah, so that's been like a huge opportunity, and me just branching out again, like put myself in the box, then finally was like, wait a minute, I can open this box and serve at a bigger level than I ever have before. So that's been such a great journey.
That's incredible. And I can hear, well, they won't be listening to this podcast. There's sometimes a penny section that is very critical and of everything, and one of those voices.
I love that, the penny section. I love that.
It's just like, but I can hear that section being like, oh gosh, what's you come here to advertise that? No, actually, because this is the Modern Consulting Podcast, and one of the things that we're constantly doing is looking at business models and really business model evolution. And one of the things that one of my mentors, Jay Abraham, that I learned from him is to always be studying different business models to be able to find inspiration for how you might be zigging while they zag. And so it's like, oh, great. Maybe there's something you could be learning from lawyers. Maybe there's something that you could be learning from SaaS. Maybe there's something that you could be learning from online course business models. And so when we listen to Danielle's story of how she's evolving her business model, there's so many lessons in there if we're willing to open our minds to being strategic, which brings me up to another question for you, Danielle, which is, you had mentioned, we were talking privately, and you had mentioned about inner circle that was coming. Could you tell us more about that?
Yeah, I mean, leaning more into community. So yeah, I think really me evolving, and I think everyone listening can probably relate, where evolving from that lone leader, because as a consultant, a lot of times it can feel like that for sure. And even as a course creator, to being a part of a community again. So yeah, with MemberUp, we're launching a mastermind, and it's MemberUp Insiders that is for other creators, 6, 7, 8-figure business owners. And what I love about it is I'm creating it from a space of, I'm in my community era, I'm in my foster family era. Like, I want to know that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, these are people I'm going to dinner with. These are people who my future, my niece, is getting internships with, and I'm giving their kids internships. Like, that's what we're building, because I think I've now spent hundreds of thousands of dollars on, mentorship and masterminds and coaching. And one thing I want to create is a space that's on that personal connection. And so that's what we're doing with it. And oh my God, I love that you just shared this, the power of looking at other business models. So it's going to be for people from all different niches, all kinds of businesses, because I am in my student era. So I think I was in my expert hat for so many years with the course business. I got locked into it because it's that feedback loop. I show up as the expert. The members, my students who buy my course, reinforce Danielle is the expert. She knows everything. And then I show up in that way, and it's that feedback loop. So my identity was stuck in teacher, but really, like, I'm a student. Like, I am eternally curious. So forming this group is allowing me to be a student again, bringing in people like you, Marc, people who might be listening, who can come and like share openly with others, so that we can learn from those other business models. Because that's where I've gotten those sparks when I joined those rooms of people who were completely different. I mean, coming from an oil and gas business, and now they're transitioning into best-selling author. Oh, what can I learn from you? Yeah, so really excited about that. Yeah, it's going to be coming up really soon.
That is good. I really like that you mentioned transitioning from like expert to student. Are you familiar with the unconscious competence model?
Ooh, no.
Ah, man. So this is a fun one. There's like 4 stages of mastery, more or less, and the first level is unconscious incompetence. You don't know that you don't know, and then the next level up is conscious incompetence. You know that you don't know. you know that you suck at whatever the thing is that you're trying to do. And then the third level is conscious competence, where you're able, you can do it, but you've got to put in a work to make sure that it's like done well. And then the fourth level is unconscious competence, where it's like you don't have to think about it, you just do. You know,
Oh, wow. I love that.
it's this really, because it's so applicable to any area of our life that we're interested in trying to improve. It might be business, it could be health, it could be, you know, anything. And it's just like, oh, where am I at? Okay, cool. Because it then leads you to the next step. There's a suggestion to updating the model, though, which is there could be potentially a fifth level, if you will, where you're able to go between any of the stages. If you wish to be a great teacher, it's necessary to then be able to put back on the eyes of the student. And it's like it comes back full circle, and it's like you're able to just move like between all of them. And then now you're able to basically connect with anyone and communicate to anyone at, you know, any level, and then you're better able to help, you know. And so that's what I heard within that story that you just shared of, oh, you've took off the expert and now you're like back in like student mode, you know. And I think it's just, and I'm biased, I already told you, top 5 learner. Yes. I love being in that space. That for me is a world of fun. I just looked at the clock. Wow. We've been going. And like, time flies when we have conversations.
Absolutely.
I want to be respectful of your time, and there's like a couple closing questions that I always like to wrap up with, and one of them is, what's the most interesting book you've read this year or even like last year, if any? And if there's no book, you know, it could even be like a documentary that you've seen or something that's just really sparked your mind.
Oh, don't tempt me with a good time, Mark. You're bringing in all the,
Nice.
Okay, fun fact, related, not related, so I'm dating now, right? So on my dating profile, there's like a voice note. So, you know, on Hinge, you can do a voice note. And so the voice note I asked the question of, what's a piece of art that's inspired you recently? But then I elaborate and I say, now by art, it could be a painting, but it could also be a documentary. It could be a Netflix series. It could be a piece of furniture, you know, like any piece of art. So I love that you asked that question. And I'm like, don't open it up on the books, because we're going to be here a long time. The books.
Let's go.
Oh my God. Let's see. So I make it a habit to create a curriculum for myself on whatever I'm looking to close the gap on in my life. So right now it's love and it's habits, going back to habit formation. So most recently, I was listening to Calling in the One, which is the story of a woman who, you know, calls in her life partner. So that's been really good. And what's been good about it is, I mean, it could be talking about calling in your romantic partner, but it could be just as well talking about calling in your business partner or your best friend, just any individual who can make a huge difference in your life to wherever you're looking to go. So there's a lot of exercises on self that are in the book. So yeah, so that's been like a surprising one. I almost want to bring out my Audible and see.
Hey, let's do it. I'm here for it.
I'm like, I always forget what's popping in here. All right. Here we go. Okay. Oh, shoot. You know, I lost my phone. And so.
So you're not able to like log in and yeah.
It'll take a little longer and I don't want to have people waiting. So.
All right.
But yeah. Okay.
So I got you back. Because I do the same thing, hence the bookshelves. I have another set of bookshelves over here that people can't see. And have you heard of The Course of Love by Alain the bottom? I think I might be butchering his last name. But he's best known for The School of Life, popular on YouTube. School of Life. So he's got a book called The Course of Love. And what's unique about it is that it charts the journey of people who meet and they start to date. And the reason for writing the book is like most love stories stop at the happily ever after. But what happens after that? And then
Ooh,
it actually goes through decades of their life story. Kids, like
wow.
everything, like to 70s, like 80s. It's fascinating. And as they go through the journey, he comes in and like gives commentary and like, oh, here's why they're having these issues here, what they're really trying to say. And so it's like teaching at the same time telling this very interesting story. I found that one to be very fascinating. Have you also heard about why him, why her? It's like why we love who we love.
No,
Oh, okay. All right. So you might.
writing these
All
down.
right. So this one is if you like more of like the science-based approach where it's like, hey, listen, we're basically picking people. The core premise is we're picking people or influence to pick people based on um our chemical deficiencies. Like, if we don't have enough
Wow.
dopamine, we want the exciting person. If we don't have enough serotonin, we want the person that chills us out, you know, oxytocin. And the whole thing, and they have these different archetypes that they describe, and so like that's been a fascinating lens for like looking at that one too. And we can continue on text message. I could go down
Yeah,
this.
please. Oh my God.
Yeah.
You know, one that just came up as you're talking, Gamal actually recommended it
Mm-hmm.
via Abu. So I think Abu recommended it
Oh,
originally.
okay.
Wanting. I don't know
Oh,
if you read.
no, I
Okay.
don't know this one.
So
Yeah.
that was pivotal for me last year when I was thinking about transitioning, transitioning brand, business model. It talks about mimetic desires. So how a lot of the decisions we make are based on what others around us are doing. Even if everyone around us is driving the Lambo and we're like, oh, I don't want a Lambo, I'm going to get a Tesla. You're still making a decision based on others.
Yeah.
It's referencing theirs. And you're like, I want to do the opposite. So
Mm-hmm.
it explores what happens when you look inside instead. And I think in our industry, because we have access to social media, it's a blessing. And also sometimes it can be crippling and we can end up pursuing someone else's vision of success. So Wanting is a great book. If you're feeling kind of lost in the sauce and or looking for some agency in your transition.
I
And then
really like
another one
that.
related to that I just started re-listening to. I listen to this once a year, but the one thing.
Ooh,
So I
okay.
re-listen to it once a year just to get myself refocused. And that's another good one when you're like building something new and or refining, what you have, and you feel like, oh God, I've got too many things going on. Just bringing it back to principles.
I love that. Ooh, book nerd out session. Always good.
Yeah.
I'm here for it. Okay, so other question. What? It's raining outside. You can't go anywhere. Maybe it's storming. And you're stuck inside. And you'll be stuck inside for whatever reason for like a week. You have one dessert. What's it going to be?
I was not expecting that question. Ooh, chocolate chip cookies.
Chocolate chip cookies.
It's got to be the right kind. So when
Okay.
I lived in Brooklyn, I would go to this place. I can't remember the name, but it was so funny. I would order a cookie, so it was pretty big and it would be almost fully baked. You feel me? Like it was still a little bit soft, crispy on the edges, right?
Okay. All
It
right.
was perfect. And it was like a $4.89 cookie. And every time I would order it through DoorDash, I would wonder, when are they going to prevent me from being able to place an under $5 order that hand delivered to me at any time? I was ready to be cut off. Ellis Bakehouse, I think it was called Ellis Bakehouse. So good. So it would be Ellis Bakehouse chocolate chip cookies all the way.
That's amazing. She's like, I'm getting
God bless
away
them.
with this. And for how long?
For enabling. God bless them.
That's, oh, that's fantastic. All right. So we could go like towards the opposite end. It's going to be a little bit on the deep end. If you could go back in time to before you launched Course from Scratch, knowing everything that you know now, what advice would you give to yourself?
It it would be to listen to myself. Yeah, really develop. If there was a superpower I wished upon myself earlier in life, it would be to listen to myself, to take those quiet moments and connect, however, to God, source, universe, self, and ask the questions. And of course, we can only ask the questions at the level of our current consciousness. But sometimes the answers that come in are from that higher state of consciousness, because they are coming from our future self, our like 80-year-old sage self who has already lived and is coming, to give us that answer. That's what I would encourage myself to do.
No further questions, Your Honor. All right. that's thank you for that. That was an incredible answer and such a great place for us to wrap this on, because that's something that I think we could all remind ourselves to do more of, myself included. And I just want to thank you for sharing the gift of being you with all of us, so that we can find more of ourselves and more fully self-express in the world. So
thank you, Mark. Thank you so much for having me on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Hey, thanks for checking out the show. If you liked it, go ahead and hit the like button, and also subscribe so you don't miss another one. It also tells us which ones that you like the most, so that we can then do more interviews like that. If you want to go from idea to implementation though, especially if you're wanting to productize your expertise so that you can scale your impact on your clients and of course grow your business, then join our email list. There we're going to talk about how modern consultants can productize their expertise so that they can have a greater impact on the world around them and live life on their terms. If that's up your alley, I hope to see you on the other side. Talk soon.